that cities can work to try to create more and different types of housing options, to create opportunities for hopefully smaller scale development or first time developers, and to make sure that, we're also having some preservation. We have very, I live in a house that was built in 1920, and my good thing I'm only 5 foot, because, it is a smaller house. And so I think it's just trying to reimagine what are these options, and to have different housing at different price points. The land bank will be another tool. I think we've been saying there is nothing that is a be-all, end-all, that is going to be that one silver bullet to solve the affordability and availability of housing. But this is another tool that we're excited and happy to help, and glad that the state has been on board. The state land bank will help with that transition, and most likely what will happen, it's not going to be in front of us probably as soon as we might have thought, because there have been some questions, particularly around if that authority will sit with what's called our Brownfield Authority, which I also serve on, just to be able to help support the staff who has to have another meeting. It's very tied to other incentives that we have. So, but it's an exciting thing, and I think it will be certainly helpful in the city.
Can you help explain the difference between Brownfield and this local bank?
Yeah. So the Brownfield Authority is really it's a tax increment financing, capturing different pieces around, say if somebody has a development in a property that, was a brownfield or had some, environmental pieces that needed to be addressed, had that cleanup that needed to be addressed. That authority, we actually now have an environmental assessment that potential developers could enact to help them understand what might be the longer term costs as they're developing what's typically called the financial stack for the investment. And we've done that with some great projects, like we just approved something with the Diatribe, something with Habitat for Humanity, and so that helps to alleviate that, essentially, the financial pieces. And also, even though Brownfield is not a tool that was created to support solely affordability, it was really on, again, getting that Brownfield site cleanup and a better, higher use, the environment. It has helped because it will identify, different financing pieces, and then what the developer might be able to charge and at what levels of AMI.
Great.
Yeah.
Have you heard any concerns about downsides, or do you yourself feel any concerns about local government overseeing? I'm sure not all of these properties will be housing, but housing or properties in this case.
Yeah, no, I think what will happen is we'll be responsible for individuals who might want to do different activities on there. So then in the end, we won't be that landholder. It might go to somebody else who sees that opportunity for development. So while we'll be helping to essentially, I think of us as the backbone to facilitate further development, that could be another housing unit that could fall under these new zoning rules. So it won't be us holding on to it. It'd essentially be able to create the opportunities for others to be able to do that development. Since we are not developers of housing, that's a good distinction. So thanks for bringing that up.
Cool. And you mentioned earlier the Community Master Plan, which is, the city's 20-year plan.
Yes.
And city leaders and community members have been working on this for months now. A draft plan was released last month and opened up a 63-day public comment period. And I believe, if my math is right, so maybe fact check it, there's 37 days left for residents to comment on that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Community Master Plan for those who haven't been following along, and the general process it takes to get to this
Absolutely.
plan?
It's been a big lift. So this was 2020 that the work began, and it began again, right before COVID, and certainly was delayed because of that. But I want to give congratulations to our city planning director, Kristen Turkelson, along with Layla Aslani, who both have led this work, as well as our 50-person master planning steering committee that the mayor, a number of people could apply and people, put in, as well as neighborhood associations that really served as connectors. People probably saw events like come and do a walkthrough about the community master plan and the things that we're proposing. This is what might happen in this area, or this is a possibility, even if it's not a for sure plan, but this is what this plan now may allow. For the first time, the master plan took into account pillars like equity and sustainability, thinking about our lived environment, thinking about climate change, how, I often hear cities should be designed for folks that are 8 years old to 80 years old, and just what is the kind of community from a land use perspective that we would like to see. So what do we need to do for land use to be able to enact things like, so some of the topics were, economic mobility, vibrant business districts, making sure that individuals can feel like they can live and work in the community and not wanting to be displaced from Grand Rapids. So right now it's that comment period, and I think it's really important for people, even if you've been to all the sessions, even if you've come to City Hall, to continue to share thoughts, as well as we talked about the land bank. It is one of the tools. And so in Ms. Turkelson's, I think in one of her interviews, she said, this plan fits into our equitable economic development and mobile GR plan. We also, for the first time, I think we have 3 what's called area specific plans, not first ones, but first for Creston neighborhood, Southtown, and now I'm blanking on who the third one is, so I'm sorry if it was in the second ward. I don't think it was Burton Heights, but those plans also helped to spur development. For example, for a long time in Creston, we didn't have an area specific plan, and so a lot of times if you go, very nuanced, but if you go to maybe do something like a low income housing tax credit and they see you don't have an area specific plan, you can actually lose points on that process. So having these plans just allows to spur development, looking for other incentives and guiding what that neighborhood should look like, right? Because we have this general plan. So that area specific plan, that was also a big lift, and so I want to highlight that as well.
So residents have until October 16 to take part in this public comment period. Are there any opportunities after that, or does it next go to the commission to approve?
Yeah, so then it'll next come, I believe after that, it'll go back to the Planning Commission, which is really the body who's kind of been leading this work along with the planning director. So in last summer, we had a joint planning city commission meeting to talk about, at that time, zoning pieces, and then about a few weeks before the plan went out and we unveiled it, we had another joint meeting to talk about some different pieces. And so, what I would tell people is take advantage of that period. I would say we never stop taking feedback from individuals, but I do think would be a point where, okay, we'll put this plan into action, specifically around those area specific plans as well, and what might we want to see in different neighborhoods, and then work with your neighborhood associations, work with the planning department. I have a number of people who send regular letters to Planning Commission, and just look for continued ways to engage. The master planning was kind of like it's like a big anniversary, if you will. It's kind of a big event, but we'll continue looking at things like our zoning process and continue to connect with the community about how do we just change? You said it was fall, September, and then what do they say? It's sweater weather. It's going to be hot next week, and so and then again need to understand, especially like our environment. We just did an overview of our sustainability department and talked about all the impacts. What are the impacts of a changing climate, of climate change? And I know that is important to a number of residents that I talk to.
Yeah. So head on over to the city's website to find places to have or to give your input and check out. You can actually see the draft online if you go to that page. Okay. So it's about time now for us to take our first break. When we come back, we'll sit down with Police Chief Eric Winstrom.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection. On today's episode, we're talking with Police Chief Eric Winstrom about the Grand Rapids Police Department. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Allison.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for taking the time. I'm sure you're busy and have things to do out in the community, so we really appreciate that you're in here willing to talk with us.
Anytime.
So you haven't been with the police department for too long. I believe you joined March 2022, is that?
That's right, yeah, so a little over 2.5 years, yeah, and I think it's been 2 years since I've been on this show, and it seems like just yesterday.
Wow, Great, well, thank you for coming back on.
Of course.
Could you fill us in a little bit about your background before coming to Grand Rapids? And you were with the Chicago Police Department prior to this?
Yeah, for 21 years I was a police officer in the city of Chicago, and had a variety of roles. Last part of my career I spent supervising a large group of detectives on the northwest side of the city. But I was also an attorney. I actually went to law school in New York, at Brooklyn Law School, prior to becoming a police officer. So I took kind of a different trajectory in policing, as worked as an attorney for the police department as well. But I didn't start out as an attorney in the police department. I started out working beats on the south side of the city in the high-rise project known as the State Street Corridor, specifically Stateway Gardens and the Robert Taylor homes on the south side of Chicago. So it was a great career, and I made a lot of great friends, started a family there. But when this opportunity opened up back in 2022, I was very excited to compete for it, and I'm very happy I made the move over here.
You're happy in West Michigan?
Very happy, yep. Good. This is the better side of the lake. Don't tell my Chicago friends I said that, but it's true.
All right, I won't, but you are being recorded live.
I know.
So,
it's not a secret then, okay, all right.
What do you think your perspective coming into law the way that you did, how do you think that shapes how you approach this role as police chief?
Well, I'll tell you, just on a very basic level, with the legal background, I'm always thinking about, is what we're doing going to get us sued? One thing.
Good mindset
is a good mindset to have in policing. And number two is a basis for all law, and certainly for the role of a police officer, is the Constitution. And I'm a big fan of the Constitution and support of the Constitution. And I think historically, policing has ended up in some very bad places when people in police leadership see the Constitution as sort of an impediment to getting their job done, instead of the guidelines for exactly how to do your job. And if you follow it for exactly how to do your job, you're going to do your job effectively and build trust with the city. And if you see it as an impediment, and what can I do to sort of, avoid the roadblocks that the
red tape.
Constitution, right, these freedoms which are getting in the way of getting our job done, you're going to fail. And so I think with the legal background, it set me on a good foundation to, certainly as a police officer early on, to make the right decisions, and then help me advance throughout my career and certainly shape my philosophy today.
Well, you've done a lot in the 2 years you've been here, but the first couple weeks with the Grand Rapids Police Department were, I'm sure, a tough couple of weeks. It was just after one Grand Rapids police officer killed a Black resident in Grand Rapids, Patrick Lyoya. What was that learning experience like, being new to this role and then having this national attention on something that is so personal to folks and hard on the community?
Well, it was very difficult. I would say for me, on a personal level, it became very lonely, because when I had just moved here, I didn't know anyone inside the police department. I didn't know anyone outside the city. And this was something that it was very difficult to navigate outside the city. And walking into the police station when I'm really surrounded by strangers who are in the same profession as I've been in a very long time, but they don't know what decisions I'm going to make or how I'm going to react. And so on a personal level, it was very lonely and very depressing, because I don't think that we've seen something, at least not in recent memory, this controversial in the city of Grand Rapids. But I'd seen it before in Chicago. And I've seen the damage that it can do to a city and to a community, especially when the police department reacts in a way which looks like they're hiding something, or they're trying to cover something up. So I think the experience that I learned from Chicago, big city, second biggest police department in the country. I worked with some of the best police officers in the world, but also some of the worst. And so because of that, because of my experience as an attorney for the police department, I really had a front row seat of how a police department can get things right and how they can get things wrong. And so when I came here, and it was, I think, 27 days maybe into my tenure here, that one of the Grand Rapids officers killed Patrick Lyoya, it was sort of a slap across the face, and but put me in a place in my mindset of, I've been here, I know the steps that we're going to have to take, I know the ethical things to do, I know nothing's going to be easy, there's no way we're going to be able to make this better. My job is to make sure we don't make it any worse. And it's still, we're still going on. Christopher Scher is facing second-degree murder charges, and upcoming trial potentially coming up. So this has been a long process, and but I am proud of how the city reacted, both city leadership, our elected city leadership, community leaders, and also the police officers, because immediately after that incident, crime started going up. We had a very violent summer of 2022. We had many large protests, and I knew that that was not the time that the police officers were going to be able to kind of take a step back and phone in their jobs. We needed them to be at 100%. And like I said, I didn't really know any of the officers. I didn't know what sort of caliber police officers we had, and the professionalism and the dedication they showed even when it was a difficult time for them to come to work with everything going on. I was really impressed. And so, like I said, I wasn't able to make Patrick's death any better, but I knew from the day one when I met with Peter, his dad, the way I addressed the officers that I did every day when I would come to work at 5:30 a.m. and talk to the first officers that show up and not leave till at least 6:30 at night when the last nighttime group comes in. I just knew that everything I did, we weren't going to be able to make it any better, but I couldn't make it any worse, and we're still doing that to this day.
So from the start, it kind of put you in this position to really focus on community relations with the police department and the community. What are some things that have been done so far, really since April 2022, that you're proud of in that realm of building community relations.
Yeah, question in venues like this, when I was in interviews early on after the incident in April of 2022, was how are you going to rebuild community trust? In talking to the community, it sounds like the trust, even before that incident, wasn't quite there. So what I saw was, how are we going to start the trust? And there is no magic wand for, I'm going to do this one thing or hold an event and everyone's going to trust the police department, everyone's going to trust me. I know that it is a journey that's going to take days, months, years of ethical and good behavior by the police department, always doing the right thing, and the pattern of that to get to the point where we're trusted. And short answer for what we've done since I've got here to build that trust is everything that we possibly can. I rewrote many policies, including the use of force policy, which was a big one, especially in this incident. Training is huge. We've switched to a control tactic training. When I was a new police officer, I went through the police academy in Chicago and I learned how to box. Well, the truth is, if you're in a situation as a police officer where you're trying to get somebody in handcuffs, boxing is not an effective thing to do. But that's what they taught. And policing as a profession takes a long time to evolve, partly because you've been doing it for so many years, and the answer is always, this is how we've always done it. It's government. This is how we always done it. But I inherited a wonderful training environment and a group of police officers who want to be the best, and they want to look for what's the best way to do this, and let's train to it. So I have a group of training officers who were certified in control tactics based on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is no longer, let me see who can punch in the face fastest. It's holds, it's grappling techniques, it's putting someone in handcuffs in a way that, if there's a video which ends up on Facebook now, it's not a video of a police officer punching someone over and over, that no matter what the context is, you look at that and say, oh, that doesn't look good. Now it's officers literally just hugging and holding and grappling to get somebody in handcuffs. It's more peaceful and much more effective. So that's been huge for us. As far as community interactions, I said yes to everything that I could, and I still do. I don't want to say that I've let off the brake at all, but I would get invited to more friendly environments like a church group, community, neighborhood organizations. But I would also get invited to organizations which really wanted to challenge me. I spoke in front of many Congolese congregations. And I remember I spent a Memorial Day for 5 hours in a Congolese church, and the first, I would say, hour or so, it was me standing up there in front of this congregation of hundreds of Congolese refugees, and it was, why did you kill our brother? Why do you support excessive force? Why do all these very difficult? But I said, I'm going to stand here and answer these questions for as long as you want. And fast forward, an hour or two later, and we're talking about how do I get the points off my driver's license? And I'm having the conversation with this Congolese refugee community of just, hey, we're new Americans, and we have some new American questions. Can we talk about that? And so we developed those relationships. And it's not just me. Since then, my officers have been engaged, and not just have been engaged with them, not just the Congolese refugee community, but especially across not just Grand Rapids, but West Michigan, Kentwood especially. There's a large group of refugees from various parts of the country. And we take every opportunity we can to show up in uniform. If they want us in uniform, I'll wear sweatshirts and jeans if they don't want to see an officer in uniform. If I'm invited to a community event and it touches on Grand Rapids and there's a connection that I can make to let our community know I care, I'm interested, but I work for you. I'm not one of these police officers that's going to say, I know my job better than anybody and I'm going to police you, because that turns more into a us against them mentality. I'm not part of an occupying army. I work for the city of Grand Rapids, and I want to hear from the city how the city wants to be policed. So every opportunity, if I'm invited, unless I've been invited somewhere else earlier, I say yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for taking those questions. We're at time now for break already. Time is fast. So when we return, we will be taking questions from viewers like you. Welcome back to City Connection. If you're just now tuning in, I'm Allison Donahue, and in this segment, our guest, 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi, and the Grand Rapids Police Department Police Chief Eric Winstrom will be here taking questions and submissions from viewers at home. There's still time to take part in the conversation. Just send your questions over to cityconnection@grcmc.org. Looks like we have some questions lined up. This one is for the police chief from Kenneth. Kenneth asks, with the new development downtown, the amphitheater and soccer stadium, for example, what are the extra security risks, and is there a need for more police to deal with this?
Great question, and I wouldn't actually call it security risks, but security or mostly really traffic concerns are more on point. So anytime there's a large event at, say, the Van Andel Arena, which can hold over 10,000 people, we have police officers, as many as 8, assigned to that arena event. And essentially it's to ensure that traffic flows properly and that pedestrians can move safely. And of course, with that many people, there is the potential for some illegal activity, but we don't really see high level illegal activity. Oftentimes we'll see a fight in the arena, we'll see an illegal vendor outside the arena or something low level. So as far as high level security concerns for potential amphitheater, soccer stadium, anything that's coming, additional people always bring more concern in just the realization, like just as we're talking ambulances or fire trucks, when you add more people, there's a potential for more emergencies. However, security risks, I don't see really any downside for building these type of facilities because we're so good at and so used to dealing with events. We have a long history of dealing with large events at DeVos Place or 20 Monroe or the Van Andel Arena. It's something that we have people dedicated to. We get a lot of reps at it, so it's not a concern, and we're frankly looking forward to it.
There's already a system in place. So another question from Beth. When events like Art Prize happen downtown, does the city provide additional policing? Very similar question. What about driving and parking? Does that cost the city more? And how do you budget for the amount of hours you might need for events that are popping up?
Well, from police side of thing, for Art Prize, yes, we assign police officers specifically to the Art Prize venue. We have specific points where there might be pedestrians crossing, which we'll put officers at. But just the idea of having 10, 20, 30,000 potential pedestrians or more downtown, we know that there's going to be a need for people who want to flag down police officers and say, officers, even a lost child or a misplaced wallet, things like that, basic things that you might need a police officer for, directions. And so we always staff for our prize with more officers. We will have more officers, but we've been doing it many years and don't anticipate any problems. And again, it's something that I personally have looked forward to the past couple of years and glad that it's still going on this year. The second part of that question was about parking, and I didn't quite understand what it was. Maybe the commissioner did, but
let's see if I can
So
see the question.
I think it talked about pedestrians and parking.
Oh,
so
okay.
Parking
maybe
and driving.
I think one of the things that I'll just add, Chief, is that we obviously have a number of lots. We have city-owned lots. We have private lots. We also have made investments in our dash system so that it can have more ease of use to go downtown. There's micro-mobility, which again, some people have some pluses and minuses, but it is connecting people, particularly around this, our city center, but even from other parts of the community. And we've just invested in a rideshare pilot program. So looking for other ways for people to be able to get down. When I'm in Chicago, my husband will say, you walk 20 blocks and don't complain, but in Grand Rapids you complain. Why is that? And so I think a lot of this is our mental models that we have. How is that shifting? How can we support things? I know even like in our state budget, there's going to be support for financial support for things like electric bicycles. And so, it seemed like the question was, how do you balance all that? Where do you all come in? But at the intersections, it does need to be a uniformed police officer who is directing the traffic, if I'm correct, right? That's that's state law.
Right.
So people ask us that question sometimes too. So it's not that there is always more things to do, but that is a requirement. There are certainly, some very scary things that could happen when you put that many pedestrians and vehicles together. So having our force out there, and they're often waving at people and see some of the regular folks. And then I would just say, from a parking perspective, to consider what are other modes of mobility to get around and to go to other neighborhoods too. Right now, supporting our neighborhoods like Uptown and the Cesar Chavez corridor, Granville Avenue corridor, that have had a lot of construction, is another great way for people to kind of be in the Art Prize space and be downtown, but venture out into the neighborhoods too.
Yeah, Art Prize is not just a downtown,
It's not just downtown
event.
Yeah.
There's plenty of places with more parking available. So a question from Juan: how do you square the GRPD's interest in using drones to monitor our community neighborhoods to our constitutional right to privacy as citizens?
Well, the short answer to that is we follow the Constitution. That's the way to do it. And just the fact that we have drones, which we do have operational drones now, doesn't mean that we don't pay very close attention to respecting individuals' privacy rights. So you won't see a drone, flying in your backyard, looking in your window. You won't see a drone flying over a space where we would need a search warrant to have a police officer. There are privacy considerations, and how we keep those in place is through our training, through the policy, and through our accountability system, which it's very easy to make a complaint on a police officer. There's numerous ways to do it. You can do it even anonymously. We'll take the complaints. You can do it through OPA. You can do it through our internal affairs. And frankly, we don't get complaints about drones because we use them in a very responsible manner. I've almost always listened to the radio. I have it off now, but I have it on usually when I'm at work, and oftentimes even when I'm at home. And I'll tell you, over the past couple of weeks, the only time I've heard drones used was a missing elderly individual and a missing child. So there are cases where I think we can all get together and say 100%, I'm glad that the Grand Rapids Police Department has these drones. If I have a loved one with dementia, especially with thermal imaging. I live by Huff Park in the northeast side of town. We had a 9-year-old boy who went missing in Huff Park, and we were able to put the drone up, and it was after dusk. And turning that thermal imaging on, we can see where he is on the boardwalk. So there's a lot of benefits to the drone. We recognize early on that with that technology, there is the potential for violation of privacy. So we've been very intentional in making sure that that is not what we plan to do, not what we intend to do, not what we're allowed to do, and we hold ourselves to very high standards, and we'll continue to doing that. And I know that if my boss, the city manager, if the mayor, if the commissioners hear that the police department is abusing or misusing drones, we wouldn't have drones anymore. But that's not a concern of mine.
It's my understanding there were specific or certain policies, or it's laid out in the policy what drones are allowed to be used for. And I also believe there are reports being put out too that will say what each drone flight was used for.
We have a very robust reporting system where we report to the Office of Oversight and Professional Accountability, so they monitor the usage. Like I said, the data really shows that there's no, anytime a drone is put in the air, we have to report it to the FAA, but it also gets reported to me. I get a text message and an email in real time what the drone is going up for, where it's going up, and I'm able to actually pull the video up in real time. And always it has to conform with one of the very specific reasons of why we're authorizing drones to be used.
Okay. Last question for Police Chief Eric Winstrom here. This one's coming from Brian. Brian says, last summer there was the huge crime wave on car thefts. That seems to have died down this year, or at least less reported. Is there less, and if so, why?
There is, and there was a crime wave on car thefts last summer, and there was a summer before. In 2022, it really spiked. It started off, and it was really a trend started on social media where individuals, mostly young people, learned that and shared the information that with just a flathead screwdriver and a USB cord, if you had 60 to 90 seconds, you could break into a Kia or Hyundai from the manufacturing date of 2010 to 2021. They had removed the security features off their ignition system. So if you could get into that car, it would take you about a minute, maybe a little over a minute. with that screwdriver to open the steering column and to steal that car. And it became a challenge on TikTok. And then what young people were doing were posting not only how fast they could steal it, but then them driving in dangerous stunts. And it became a very dangerous trend. We saw it across the country. So how we dealt with it, obviously the police, we know our job very well, and there were arrests made, there were offenders identified, but unfortunately most of the individuals that were doing this were young as 11 years old. And so we know that the answer for how do I stop an 11-year-old from breaking into the car shouldn't be, well, we're going to send that kid to prison. That's not an answer for an 11-year-old. So what else are we going to do? And it was educating the parents, educating the community to take further steps, securing your vehicles, and then talking to the car companies. We had Hyundai actually come to the city last summer to do a free event where they would upgrade the ignition systems of any of the vehicles in that time range, free of charge, just pull up, and they get it done in a few minutes. So a combination of all that, we've seen less car thefts year to date this year than pre-pandemic. It's been many, many years before I got here that car thefts have been so low. And it wasn't just the police department doing it, it was everybody together recognizing this problem. So we've really turned the corner on that issue.
So you got it right. It wasn't just something you were making up in your head. There really is less car thefts. So we're about to head into another break, but when we return, we will be taking more questions from the community. Stay tuned.
It's morning in Grand Rapids. Do you know what's going on in your city? Stay informed about what's happening in your community with The Rapidian, your source for hyperlocal news and information. The Rapidian is a community-focused news source powered by local residents like you. Our volunteer writers and reporters create content that hits close to home about topics like local government, business, schools, events, and people. The Rapidian goes beyond the headlines to provide in-depth coverage of issues that affect Grand Rapids directly, so you can stay in the know. We aim to uplift the community by sharing positive, inspiring stories of growth, progress, and neighborhood pride. The Rapidian is your neighborhood newspaper for the digital age. Follow us on our website and social media to stay connected to your community. This is The Rapidian.
And we're back. Here with us on City Connection is 2nd Ward Commissioner Milinda Ysasi. Thank you so much for sticking with us this time.
For sure.
Not that you've ever left. That is that weird. We have more questions from viewers, so let's get back into it. This first question comes from Macy. Macy asks, is the city responsible for election security, and what is the city doing to keep people safe? Some of the recent rhetoric has me thinking I'll do mail-in just to avoid going to the polls.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. I think, yes, election security has been in the news. And what I can say after we had our last election, that our elections here in Grand Rapids and Kent County in the state of Michigan, actually our city clerk and the Kent County clerk, so Clerk Hondorp and Lyons, actually issued a statement together that our elections are safe and secure here in our community, as well as at the state level. I'm really grateful to our city clerk who has, we kind of joke that he's a clerk's clerk. He loves the education. He loves going to community events, just like Chief Winstrom was talking about, just making sure people are comfortable. And that's a great thing about some of the proposals that were over the last couple of years, where it made no reason absentee ballot voting available here in our city. Now we have early voting that has been enacted, and this is our first cycle of doing it. So there are so many ways that people can come and cast their ballot. They can go on the day of in person at their precinct. I will say those that are doing that, it is declining, but it is a personal choice. You have that no reason absentee ballot. That's what I plan to do, and I'm on what's called the permanent absentee voter list. So you can do an application and then say, I want to always get this ballot. It's not sent to you, without you asking for that. So I think that's also a security issue sometimes. And then you can take those to City Hall, or you can put them in one of the drop boxes around the community, oftentimes in front of our libraries, and those have security as well and are retrieved every evening when they're open and available. So that's important for people to know. And then early voting is something new, and I had a chance to go to one of the sites at GRPS University, and so we have really well-trained volunteers, making sure that people do not feel intimidated, and I hope that we can continue that here as we go into our November election season.
I want to make it clear too with the early voting, you might not be going to the same location you normally do.
Absolutely,
if
yes.
you go on
Very
election
good point.
day.
Yep, you can go to any of the early voting sites, regardless of what your precinct or ward is. And so you could be, in the second ward and decide to go to Ottawa Hills High School. And so, yep, that's important to know. And we'll probably be doing some reminders tomorrow, just because, again, September 26 or 27 is when those absentee ballots will go out. So people will begin to vote really at the start of October. So I always remind people voting starts not on, election day, but it's really starting that 45 days ahead of time.
Have you seen the new stickers, the new I voted stickers?
I haven't seen the new I voted stickers. I have a I voted pin that my husband got me.
Oh, that's nice. You are an absentee voter, it sounds like. Yeah, the new stickers they're giving out on election day were all
in the
drawn
packet,
by
yes.
Michiganders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to
I'm
check
excited.
it out.
That's why I'm voting.
My husband
in
probably
person
stole
this
it. Yes.
Another question, this one comes from Lindsay. Why did they move city elections to coincide with national elections? I hardly hear anything about our local elections.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Lindsay. I think it is, we were talking ahead of time. So previous to 2020, or in 2020, there was a ballot proposal that was put forth by a group of citizens, which anybody has the ability to do that changed our voting for municipal city elections to even years. I don't want to speak for that group, but at least what was presented to us at City Commission is because they felt like people who were running on the odd years, like myself, I did win in a 2019 race, that there weren't enough people coming out for those elections. And it wasn't fair to have representation by too little of individuals. And then they also wanted to remove the past rule that you could win in a primary if you had 50% plus one vote. So in the past, there were some colleagues, like my past commissioner colleague Joe Jones, my past commissioner Sunita Lanier, they both won in primary elections, and I think Mayor Bliss even probably won in one of the primary elections too. And so they removed that law. And there were a number of us, just in full disclosure, it's in the media, that were against that because we felt like local elections need to we want to be hyper local, and what we're seeing now is certainly our federal elections are important, and every year, this is the most important election of your life because it is, because it's the one in front of you, and it is the most important. What I am concerned about is that it is being drowned out of like who is on the ballot for mayor, who's on the ballot for city commission, school board races, bodies like our community college board of trustees. And quite honestly, it's very expensive to run for office when you're running during this cycle of even year. Everything is so much more because you're paying for more materials. And, I quite honestly just feel I recognize my own privilege to be able to run for office and to be on commission, because it does take time and does take money. And I know there's a whole bunch of people who would love to be able to do this, but feel intimidated by those things. So I don't know what that looks like in the future. Some communities have some publicly funded campaign financing. I don't know if we're there yet, but I do know that I wish our elections were on even year or odd years still.
Yeah, I guess it's just a good reminder to stay as locked into local elections as you possibly can.
Yep. May I add that there's a couple of candidate forums for people to kind of be mindful for some local races. So this week, Thursday, there is a mayoral and third ward candidate forum at Beacon Hill, which is open to anybody. That's in the third ward on Boston. Link is having a candidate forum with mayoral and I believe city commissioner candidates on October 4th. Latino Community Coalition is having one on October 9th. And there's some other smaller forums too that are being just put on by different community groups. So, but again, people are going to start to vote on, like October 1. And so getting that information ahead of time is just so important.
Yeah, I will also add to your list that the Rapidian and GRTV are hosting a mayoral debate on October 21 at Wealthy Theater. More information is on grcmc.org. That's a public and free event. So if anyone wants to hear
get
directly,
some popcorn.
Yeah,
that'll be
popcorn,
great.
pop.
I will be there.
Great, me too. This question is from Vince. We talked about this a bit earlier.
Sure.
About land banks. Vince is asking what a land bank is. If you want to provide a more clarifying definition than what I was able to give.
I think you provided a great definition. And so there are different times where there might be distressed or, essentially property that is gone to disrepair. It is, doesn't have like a rightful owner anymore. And so that land banks allows that property to be held, to do some different things to make that development hopefully be easier for the next person, because again, we want to maintain our housing stock in the city. We don't have any more land. We are landlocked here in the city of Grand Rapids, right? I mean, it's going to go up, and that's why we've seen some of those zoning changes, and you'll see some of that in the master plan. But an abundance of single family homes coming on, anybody's block is just not going to happen. And so that land bank, for those that might have fallen into that category of, distress or, out of that compliance pieces with the taxes, allows us to hold it, but then can also be sold. And so it's not like the city holding on to it. There are, different requirements that are needing to be in place for holding different property. And so I'm not a lawyer like Chief Winstrom, nor I don't think he's a property lawyer, but it's important to know that it really is trying to get to that best purpose of how somebody else could either buy it to redevelop it or buy it for themselves as well.
Okay. Another question from Jocelyn. Jocelyn says, it seems like Grand Rapids is trying to grow to be a big city. With developments of an amphitheater, a downtown stadium, an aquarium, etc. What does the master plan say about this? Personally, I like the small town feel of GR and would prefer not to expand.
So I'll thank you for the question, Jocelyn. The master plan is really about the land use, like what can go where and sort of how, and what are the considerations that we need to make in terms of like a business district or concerns about climate change. Obviously a big one is concerns about mobility and how people get to and from. In terms of development overall and who decides to put what development forth is not solely guided by that master plan. There might be we see an opportunity for this, but individuals may have, ownership rights to different property and could decide what they either want to do or redevelop on any site. I often have people who will say, we need to do this here at this site and somebody needs to do that. That's really up to that landholder or a group of people to come together to say, one, we'd like to do this. Two, does it follow the zoning laws? And then what are the appropriate financing things that need to happen? And so I've grown up here my whole life. I'm 44 years old, and so I've seen so many different changes in the city of Grand Rapids, and my family's been here since the late 40s, and it has changed. I think some of the drivers of that change have been different industry. So not only our educational system, but places like Grand Valley, Go Lakers, but you see, you see MSU, the medical mile. I think it is that it's like, I don't think choices are binary, and I think that is what we hope to have, is that people they can live in a neighborhood that they really like, and that's what we want to have. We want people to have their housing choice, which, again, there's a lot of challenges in that too. But I live 4 minutes from downtown. My mom and dad live, I call it sober, south of Burton, in what can feel like a little bit of a suburb, even though it is the city of Grand Rapids. And so And it's also important to know that the city is supported through income tax dollars and property tax dollars. So we are looking to bring in different businesses and to bring in more residents, because that will hopefully go towards our general fund and identify what are some things that we can invest in and the things that we have to do as a city, right? Providing water, trash service, snow plowing service. Our there's a requirement in our charter around the percentage of police budget that we have, fire department. And so all of those things are increasing. And so we'll always, I think, at least with this current commission, want to support, further development in the city.
Yeah, I've been finding my small town feel now
Yes.
in like the neighborhoods or business districts. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I feel like you can
Yep.
find it a little bit easier there now. We've reached the end of the show. It's all the time we have for today. So thank you to Commissioner Ysasi for coming in, and Police Chief Eric Winstrom for coming in and sharing your insights. And thank you to all of you at home for tuning in and sending in your questions. Don't forget, you can always watch rebroadcasts throughout the month of September on cable GRTV's Channel 25 or the GRTV YouTube page. See you next month, Grand Rapids.
The Grand Rapids Community Media Center is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment for all community members. It is a place where community voices are heard, valued, and lifted through media. We seek to provide area residents with a platform to participate in free speech, be engaged with the community, and share their diverse voices. As a multimedia platform organization, we provide and support a variety of community resources, including our radio station, WYCE 88.1 FM, our TV station, GRTV, our hyper-local news program, The Rapidian, web services, and our historic theater, Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is West Michigan's only community radio station that is listener-supported and volunteer-powered. WYCE uses local voices to help listeners discover and celebrate different services, cultures, and events. What I really like about programming music in WYCE is I get to not only interact with listeners and local musicians, but I get to put together a musical collage every week and give it away to the universe. As a volunteer programmer, you get the training on how to use equipment, how to access music from the library, and how to put together a great show that showcases local and national artists and still has your creativity included.
The Web Services Department helps West Michigan nonprofits connect, learn, create, and share through locally built and accessible websites. We help nonprofits strengthen their online presence by developing one-of-a-kind websites tailored to their specific needs. The Web Services team can take care of all the technical needs of getting a new site up and running, including website hosting, domain name registration, theme development, and page layout. Websites are built with accessibility and responsiveness in mind, making sure our projects are available on any screen and accessible to people of all abilities. We are passionate about helping organizations in the nonprofit sector effectively communicate their stories online, promoting equity and media access with our affordable services.
Wealthy Theater is a historic theater on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. It was built in 1911, and today it stands as a performing arts center, historic cinema, and community venue. We provide a space for community connection, where community members can get together, enjoy different shows and different events, from concerts to comedy, musicals, theater, film screenings, you name it. Anybody from the community can sign up to be a member and rent one of our spaces to host their event. We have a staff here at the theater that helps make all the events here happen. as well as a great community of volunteers. The goal is to bring the community together, bring audiences together, artists together, create experiences where those two can connect. Whether you're an audience member who wants to come see a show or you're somebody who wants to put on a show, Wealthy Theater is a space for you.
The Rapidian is a hyper-local news source powered by, for, and of the people of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We launched in 2009 using funds from local organizations and generous donors, and this community-driven platform empowers residents to share their stories, post articles, and keep track of local events and issues. By emphasizing citizen journalism, the Rapidian provides a unique grassroots perspective and a vital news service for the residents of Grand Rapids. In 2023, we are relaunching the Rapidian with the Grand Rapids Documenters program, where we train and pay local citizens to cover public meetings, empowering residents with the tools and resources to strengthen the news media landscape in Grand Rapids and become more civically engaged.
GRTV airs public access television programming made by and for the Grand Rapids community, amplifying their voices to support a diverse and vibrant democracy. We provide the tools, training, and broadcast platform for free speech. Community members can take classes on video and production features, borrow professional equipment, editing software, and use of our studio facilities to create their own content. We help community members connect, learn, create, and share.